Let's try this again. Good evening. First, we really are delighted that you braved this calm, cool, quiet weather. We really appreciate your participation and your presence tonight. Before we get to the agenda, I really want to take a moment to start 2025 off by introducing our board members. They work year-round, all the time on special committees. So I really want you to meet them. And I'm going to start with my officers. So when I call their name and I talk about them, would they please stand up? So first, Ernie Gormson. She's the vice president and the membership chair. Next, Dale Rudolph, the secretary. She also works with Block Builders, Book Club, and a lot of you know her from Sip and Savor. Annette Woodward is our secretary. Thanks, Annette. And she also represents our neighborhood on Inc. and is part of the Cherry Creek Steering Committee. Thank you, Lou. And I really want to highlight tonight 3 members who are on our communication team. As you can see, they're crucial to make nights like this possible, virtually and in person. So first, Doug McNaught. He's we call him our web guru. So when you sign up for membership or attend an event, you hear from Doug. Ursula, our board, and we've already got her busy working on the newsletter, Facebook, Instagram. And the third person of our communication team is enjoying warm weather, so she's not here tonight. But Leslie New has been working with our newsletter since 2004. The next thing that really keeps and makes our neighborhood vibrant is all of our events. And you know, we have events and book clubs and social events that run year-round. So we recently had a sold-out event called Dines Out, and Kate Coucher was our chair. Kate? And looking forward to spring, we have Spring Fling, and our chair is Babs Gerber. And Easiness into Fall is our Sip and Savor, which is already scheduled, put it on your calendars, for September 10th, Dale Rudolph. And this gentleman, I'd like him to stand up as I talk more about him, Dick Cohen. Dick chairs 17 social clubs and our lecture series. So Dick is on call 24/7 year-round. Dick, thank you. Another board member is Kevin Langdon, if he'd stand up. We call him Mr. Safety. He works with Denver, you can tell all behind him who's watching him tonight. He works with the Denver Police Department, the BID Safety Committee, and represents the #1 topic in our neighborhood, safety. So Kevin, thank you. And last but not least, Lou Raiders. And you have to stand because I have a lot to say about you. She leads our zoning committee and literally almost is available 24/7 between zoning, developments, license applications, a board of adjustments, good neighbor agreement, and that's just on a Monday. If that isn't enough, she also chairs the Inc., or she's a board member of the Inc., and she chairs the Cherry Creek Steering Committee and is the secretary treasurer of Transportation Solutions. See, it is a 24/7 job. I encourage you to reach out to these board members, especially if you're interested in welcoming and coming into a committee. We would love to have an active neighborhood. Our meetings like this tonight really are an opportunity to be collaborative and sharing with you all of the things we work on throughout the year. So let's jump into the agenda. We have incredible speakers tonight. So I'm going to start with Lou to introduce our honored first speaker.
I need to clip you.
New.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good enough.
Can you hear me? I'm one of those you really don't need a microphone. But as our speakers come up, I'm just going to do a little quiz here. How many people, and those of you at home can play along, how many people have lived in this neighborhood for 10 years or more? Keep your hands up. Okay, how about 20? How about 30? How about 40? How about 50? 60? I'm down at I'm down at 40. 40, yeah. How about 50? Anybody?
Not that old.
How about 60? Living in Cherry Creek North. How about 70? Well, our first speakers have been in this neighborhood their entire lives. So Judge Gary Jackson, please come up. And Doctor, I'm going to call you Doctor, Kimberly Jackson Butler, please come up. These two amazing people have been in our neighborhood longer than anybody. And they just came from the governor's mansion where they kicked off an event for Black History Month. We're so happy they rushed back to be with us tonight to talk about our deep Black history of Cherry Creek. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. So Dr. Kimberly Jackson Butler is the executive director of law school Yes We Can, which is a pipeline program for diverse students going to law schools. She graduated from STEC, Hill Junior High. She was the head girl at Denver Manual High School. She got a BA at CU Denver, a master's at Loyola Marymount, and a PhD from Johns Hopkins University. So people from the hood make good. And then Judge Jackson, who I've known for very many years, he recently retired. I think many of you probably saw the article that we did about Judge Jackson in our newsletter to honor his retirement. He was actually born at General Hospital at 8th and Colorado. Right?
Colorado General.
Colorado General.
Colorado General.
Colorado General. And he's 79, so he's been working in this area for a long time. He was a graduate of GW. He got his JD from CU. He was a state and federal prosecutor for many years, 37 years in private practice, and he retired as a Denver County Court judge in 2020. He was the founder of the Sam Carey Bar Association, and he's been inducted into the National Bar Association Fred Gary Hall of Fame in 2021. He is now actually employed at Action Jackson Realty, that many of you may know his gorgeous wife, Regina. So he is working with her, and they're both still on Garfield and 3rd. So please help me welcome these terrific neighbors and talk a little bit about our deep history. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Luke.
Before Gary starts, I'm
All right. Well, thank you very much, Lou. Such a nice introduction. We must be cousins. So let me just start off with, we're going to have a slideshow, which will make it easy and make it a lot more fun. But we have it up here, the Dame of Cherry Creek, that is actually the Great Dame of Cherry Creek, or the Grand Dame of Cherry Creek, who was my mother, who passed away in August. And she lived in North Cherry Creek for 98 years. And she lived on the same block for 98 years on 3rd and Garfield Street. So she was called the Grand Dame of Cherry Creek. This was an article in one of the Cherry Creek newspapers that was published in about 2007. So we'll start with the first slide. And that slide is my great-grandfather, William Pitts, who was born into slavery in Missouri, came to Colorado in 1919 because he had a son who was injured in a World War I incident and was hospitalized at Fitzsimmons Army Medical Hospital. My great-grandfather learned to read and write without a public school education. and learn the trade of carpentry without formal training. But he was a carpenter in Missouri, and so he comes to Colorado to see his son in 1919 and learns very quickly that the opportunities for a black man is much better in Colorado than it was in Missouri back in 1919. And so when he came to Colorado, he had some cash money, and he was able to buy 3 lots in North Cherry Creek. At that time, those lots were going for $50 a piece. 2 lots on 3rd and Garfield Street, a 3rd lot on 5th and Harrison Street. And so he bought 3 lots, he bought 3 homes, or he built 3 homes. 2 of the homes were for family members who he encouraged to move from Missouri and Illinois to come to Colorado with the enticement. If you come to Colorado, I'll have a home for you. And so that's how my mother, my grandmother, and other relatives came to Colorado in 1926. What's interesting is of those 2 homes, the 2 on Garfield Street have been leveled, but the one on Harrison Street, 563 Harrison, is still there. It's a brick bungalow, and if you look at the real estate value of that house on 5th and Harrison now, it's $770,000, and he built it by hand. So if we go to the next slide, that's a slide of me and my sister. There is little Kimmy at 2 years of age. That's me. Kim's in my arms. That is my grandmother's house at 354 Garfield Street, the one that my great-grandfather built. And at that time, when I was 16, I was going to George Washington High School. And Kim wasn't even in preschool. That's another slide. That's my brother and I in front of the same family home at 354 Garfield Street. That slide was probably taken in 1950. Now you wonder why the houses only, or the lots only cost $50 back in 1919 through 1926. It was because at First and Steel was the Denver City dump. And so the dump was there, and because of the dump being there, people of means did not want to live in that area. So it was an area where marginalized people, and when I say marginalized people, I'm going to say there were black people, there were brown people, there were, even in that area around Cherry Creek, there were homeless encampments around that area. And so that goes back to, like I say, in 1919. And then there was the issue too of Cherry Creek flooding. That was before the dam was built. And there was a flood, I believe in 1933, that devastated the Cherry Creek area. My mom can remember houses floating down Cherry Creek. So it was the result of that there was, during that period of time, and I'm going to say 1920 through about 1950s, 25 black families that lived in the North Cherry Creek area. I can remember specifically between 1st and 3rd on Jackson and Garfield Street, there were 6 black families that lived in that area, that 2-block area. And I'm going to show you my mom. This is my mom. She's probably right there. That's Nancilia Elizabeth Jackson. She was probably around 11 or 12 at that point in time. My grandmother, grandfather, and at that point in time, they had 5 brothers and sisters. That's a photograph in the living room at 354 Garfield Street. That's my mom and dad in front of the Christmas tree. 1955. In 1955, they built their own home on Garfield Street, and it was located at 324 Garfield Street. They bought the lot in 1955 for $200 in 1955, that dirt lot. As all of you know, that dirt now is probably at least 1.5 million. So that's my mom and dad. That's a photograph of my brother Larry, Dr. Kimberly, my mother right here, the Grand Dame of North Cherry Creek. And that was an award dinner maybe 6-7 years ago at my mother's church, Scott United Methodist Church on 2800 Garfield Street. My mom was a member of that church before she died for 71 years. Next slide. I'm going to show you me. That is me in the 6th grade at Steck Elementary School. As you can see, if you look around, I was the only person of color in that 6th grade class. And I ended up going to Hill Junior High School in 1957 when it was built. It was a new school in 1957. I went from Hill Junior High School to George Washington High School in 1960. It was a new high school. So I was the first class that went there all 3 years. And in 1960, in my class of 695 students, there were 2 black students, me and one other person. Mary Horton, whose family was in the Air Force, and she lived in Laurie Air Force Base before it became the Laurie that we know now. That's a photograph of, once again, there's yours truly in my baseball uniform going down to City Park and playing old timers baseball. That's the photograph of our current home. And that was built by Kimberly, Dr. Kimberly's husband, who was an architect. And he built it. We leveled my parents' home. We built a 2-unit townhouse. And so my mother and my sister live in 1 unit. My wife and I and my sister's daughter, they live in the back unit. I live in the front unit. But these photographs are really just a preview because there is a panel discussion on Saturday hosted by the Arapahoe Library System. And it's going to be a panel discussion of the black families of North Cherry Creek. We have a great panel. That panel is going to include Cleo Parker Robinson. Many of you know Cleo, but her parents, and Cleo lived in North Cherry Creek during her elementary, junior high, and high school days. In fact, in 1965, she was homecoming queen, and my brother was homecoming king in 1965. But Cleo will be on the panel. Also on the panel will be Dr. Trudy Morrison. Dr. Trudy Morrison's aunt lived at 1st and Monroe Street. They come from a family of musicians. Many of you may have heard of George Morrison Sr. He was considered to be the godfather of jazz in Denver back in the 20s and 30s. And so it was Trudy's aunt that lived on 1st and Monroe, and she would conduct piano lessons. And she did piano lessons for Cleo, as well as a number of people living in the North Cherry Creek area. The other person that will be on the panel is my uncle, Warren Scott, who's 92 years of age. He'll talk about old-time Denver and having a paper route with 325 papers that he would deliver, basically from Garfield Street to Claremont Street, 1st to 6th, and some of the famous people that he would deliver papers to. And then we have as a moderator, Chandra Whitfield of Colorado Public Radio. So we have a great panel. I'm sorry to say that all the tickets have been sold. So it's going to be an event where 350 people have already reserved tickets. But my thought is, the person that does the lecture series, maybe I get together with that person and we can do a lecture here in Cherry Creek at a facility in Cherry Creek and do a rerun in Cherry Creek. So Lou, thank you for asking me to come. And I'm glad to see a bunch of my neighbors. I don't see anybody that was on any of my juries in Denver. These police officers probably were witnesses in my courtroom at one point in time over the last 10 years. But thank you for having me here.
One more time. I mean, the historical perspective is incredible. Let's thank him again. Our next speaker is a return guest. Leslie, who I mentioned earlier, has been working on our newsletter since 2004. So I read through our newsletters starting in 2006 until last year and found out our next guest has been involved in coming to our meetings since 2007. So Nick LeMaster, come up, walk this way, and I'll say a little bit more about him. I want to talk more about Nick on a personal level. Cherry Creek North and the Business Improvement District have worked collaboratively to really make a difference, not only for our neighborhood, but a stronger outreach to our business community. And so I really want to welcome Nick back. This is his 6th appearance working with Cherry Creek North Neighborhood Association. Welcome back, Nick.
Thank you, Linda. I so appreciate the time today, and I'm not going to be nearly as interesting as the judge was. So thank you for that, Your Honor. I so appreciate, and we've known about the Black history of Cherry Creek North for a long time, but we have to find a way to memorialize this history, and I want to talk more about that with your family. And what the judge wouldn't tell you is that his beautiful wife Regina used to work for me when I ran the mall many years ago. So, and I ran into her in entrance the other day, just coincidentally. It was a nice moment. But thank you for having me. I just want to take a minute and kind of bring you up to date on a few things that are on our agenda at Cherry Creek North. I expect this to be one of the most eventful and busiest years that we perhaps have ever experienced. And I'll start with the development activity, which is just over the top, as you can imagine. You know, I've been told by experts in the field that Cherry Creek is viewed as the #1 commercial submarket in America. No other submarket is doing the kind of things that Cherry Creek North is doing. You can still get an office building leased and financed in this district, and there's very few places in America where that is true. So it's really an extraordinary time, and obviously you just have to look around and you see that the development community is taking advantage of it. Let me just kind of run down the list. Most of this you know about, but just to kind of, for those of you that may not know, just to give you a little insight as to what's happening. This is probably the busiest year since the rezoning took place many years ago, which sort of really became the catalyst for what we now know Cherry Creek North to be. But I'll start with 201 Fillmore. That is the headquarters for Antero Oil. Been a challenging project. They keep running into water every time they dig. They finally got their basement poured. They're ready to go. They're ready to go vertical here very soon. So that'll be exciting. That corner's been disrupted for way too long, and it's really arguably one of the most important corners in the entire district. So we're anxious to see what happens with that. I walked down 3rd the other day, and I looked across and I saw this big hole in the sky because 299 Milwaukee was gone. I was blown away at how quickly that building went down. That's a BMC job, and it's going to be apartments Everything, by the way, in Cherry Creek North on the ground floor has to be retail by zone code. Everything above it will be apartments. We'd love to see more condominium development, but we'll let the legislature fight that one out. Hopefully they'll get something done this year. Right across the street, another BMC project, 240 Milwaukee. That is an office project, likely fully leased, already completely financed, and that is expected to start probably in the second quarter of this year, probably about a 2-year build out there. You've probably heard about the Waldorf Astoria condominiums, the location where the old Piatti was, the St. John Knits, that entire block was assembled. Waldorf Astoria is going to start demolition here in a few weeks. Then things are going to go quiet for a while because they still need to get some things worked out with the city. It's been a very complex project. There's a whole alleyway conversation that had to take place, but those are going to be some of the most expensive residential real estate, frankly, in the entire city. But what a great brand to be associated with Waldorf Astoria. Cherry Lane, which is I'll call it the old Sears building. I thought I'd never see the day when Sears would finally go away, but it went away. The building's been sitting there vacant all these many years. Another BMC project. I want to know where Matt Jobin gets all his money, because he's got some folks who really believe in him, and all you have to do is look at the work that he's done. It's always quality, and he just does an extraordinary job. But the apartment demolition is scheduled to start in April. That too is a 24-month build out. Alpine Investments is doing the building that is right next to the Cherry Cricket. As you all know, the Cricket's going to stay where it is. The piece next to it, where the alterations office is, and Forget Me Not and the parking lot, that will all go away. Alpine Investments is doing that, and that is scheduled to start probably second quarter of 2025, with completion scheduled for 2027. 215 Detroit. This is I like to call this Terry Garbarini's building. This is the building that Terry owned. She's since sold it. That one went quiet for quite a long time. The owners there have now resurfaced, and we're anxious to see what happens with that. That too is supposed to be apartments. And then we're waiting on conversations. There's talk about 3rd and Josephine, nothing there yet. And the Bro project at 216 Clayton, nothing there to announce. But as you can see, this is just a lot. And our challenge as a BID is, how do we manage disruption? And it is probably our single biggest challenge this year, is managing that disruption, the disruption from construction alone, but then you have sort of the overflow of contractor parking and all the attendant problems that come from construction. So we got our work cut out for us this year from a construction point of view. Are there any questions about that? Okay. I will tell you this, we are committed to this, and we are getting in front of these projects as a group. I give great credit to my team, particularly Richard Barrett, Pat Allison. You may know some of them. We're getting in front of these projects very, very early so that we can make sure, for example, the office building across on Milwaukee that BMC is doing, we've demanded that they have a pedestrian tunnel there. The other side of the sidewalk is completely destroyed. We have to make sure that we have that north-south connection. So we're getting in front of this stuff early to make sure that we maintain the pedestrian character that we've become really known for. If you haven't noticed, we put a little money into our landscaping, and I'm super proud of everything that's happened there. But just to give you some idea, this spring you're going to see 40,000 bulbs emerge from the earth. We think it's going to be extraordinary, and we're going to continue to put more money into landscaping. Our approach is, if there is a development project or one that's thought to be coming, we don't do anything in front of that building. That's just not a good spend of our money. But where work has been done, and there's some that has been done, frankly, many years ago, we really categorize these block faces, A, B, C, and D, and we want to make sure that we prioritize those in the most intelligent way. But I can't wait for the spring. I can't wait to see 40,000 bulbs emerge. It's going to be quite extraordinary. We'll talk a little bit about public safety. For years, Cherry Creek North had no security whatsoever, really, until COVID. When COVID arrived, I remember being in the district one day. I was the only person in the office. Everybody else was home. I was walking around, by myself, because nobody was around, no customers, nothing. And I realized how vulnerable the district was when you considered all the investment on the real estate side and the inventory that was sitting in these stores. We put security on the ground right away. A week later, we had a security team there, and we've kept them ever since. We're going to spend over $1 million this year on public safety. We're hiring a full-time director of security. It will be the first time in the history of the BID that we've had someone solely focused on public safety and on security. And so we're going to be very selective about the person that takes that job, but it'll be the first time we do that. We've also expanded our off-duty coverage. Thanks to these good men in blue, we have off-duty Denver police 7 days a week now, which we're excited about. And we're going to be expanding our own internal private security as well. So between a new director, our off-duty work, and an expansion of the hours that we patrol, we're very, very confident about where we're headed. And this is a budget item that is never going away, at least as long as I have something to say about it. And we're super proud of where we've come. We want to get this public safety program to a new level. We want to see additional cameras. For many of you may know this, we have flock cameras in the district now, and they've already led to an arrest. And we're just delighted to know that the flock cameras are working. For those of you that don't know what a flock camera is, it identifies, it's basically license plate recognition. You guys will correct me if I'm wrong about this, but it sees these license plates, and if a car has reported as stolen, it tells the Denver police, and they descend on that vehicle. So the flock cameras have been awesome. We did that at our cost at the bid with great cooperation from the city and from the police department. So this is our number one priority. There is nothing more important. I've worked in places where you didn't own the safe brand. In fact, the brand was just the opposite. Once you lose that identity, it's very difficult to get back. So we always have to protect ourselves in that regard. So a lot happening there, and we're just super excited about it. The last thing just on the operations side I'll tell you about is we're working with a group called Walker Consultants. They are an international parking company. I'm getting worn down by parking complaints. I know parking is of no interest to you at all. Parking's a big deal. And I'll say it this way, it's the perception of parking. Anybody want to guess how many parking spaces we have in Cherry Creek North? Any guesses? 5,000. To give you some context, you're the big winner, Lou. 5,000 parking spaces in Cherry Creek North, and nobody knows it. That's the same number of parking spaces that the mall has, and nobody knows it. But nobody complains about parking at the mall, except that they now have to pay. I was there when it all happened. Yeah, you can. That's a whole other story. But we've done a terrible job of telling people, terrible job of getting people in garages where there's lots and lots of inventory. So we're working with Walker Parking to come up with strategies to better identify where the parking is. We've got this really disparate signage program. We've never really focused on it, and it is a major initiative that our board has charged us with. And so you're going to start to see some of that happening probably in fourth quarter. It's not going to be cheap, but it's important. We have to get people over this perception of parking. So it's very, very important to us. So a lot happening on the operations front, as you can see, but we're excited about it. It's going to be a busy summer, busy fall from an events perspective. Let me just kind of run down the list here. We're going to have a St. Patrick's Day event at the Jacquard on Saturday, March 15th. We're continuing our concert series this year. Throwback Thursdays on the 4th, pardon me for a second, I want to make sure I get this right. June, July, and August, one each month, from 4 to 9 p.m. On the second Thursdays, June, July, August, September, 4 concerts in a row. And so we're excited about that. The Smash Fine Arts Festival will be back in June and August. Of course, you know about the Arts Festival. We're going to be celebrating Bastille Day again in July. Sidewalk Sale, our 55th year of Sidewalk Sale. Terry, you probably used to do a little sidewalk sale business, right? Back in the Boulder Dash days? Yep. And then 5280 Magazine will again host Top of the Town in Cherry Creek North. And then in late September, we're working on our version of Oktoberfest. We're calling it Creektoberfest. And so we're anxious to see what goes on with that. A ton of new retail. You guys walk with the district just as I do. It's interesting, when retailers are coming to Denver, there's really three places they're looking, depending on where their demographic is. They're looking at Cherry Creek North, they're looking at the shopping center, or they're looking at Park Meadows if they're looking for a suburban location. And all you have to do is look around at some of the, I'll call them the B or C malls. They are really struggling. These suburban malls are really having a difficult time, to the point where they're literally having to, reinvent themselves. And that's not something we have to do. People, the retailers that we have today, the restaurants today, nearly 70 restaurants today in Cherry Creek North, this has become a dining mecca, as many of you know. This is where they want to be. My only hope on the restaurant side, I wish we had a little more local flavor. That would be nice, but rents are high and the locals are a little bit squeamish about some of the rents that they have to pay. But we're just super excited about all the retail that's coming, the new developments. I know it seems like a pain, but I look at it this way. It's in many ways a blessing. There's no place in America that's doing what Cherry Creek North is doing right now. And then when you look at what East West is going to bring to the table as well, it's just truly an extraordinary time to be in this neighborhood. And I'm honored to be here. You asked how long people were, I feel like I've lived here. Next year will be my 30th year in Cherry Creek. And I spend more time here than I would do in my own home. So I feel like I live here, but it's an honor. I feel just really honored to be here. But I'm open to any questions anybody has.
We've got two that are going to run the mics around so we can catch you on Zoom.
Let's start with the judge, sir.
Nick, one of the hats I wear is I'm on the commission called the America 250 Colorado 150 Commission. You're old enough to remember 1976.
The year I graduated high school.
When we had
The centennial.
Bicentennial,
yeah.
in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm interested in is the types of events that we can do in Cherry Creek to celebrate the 250-year anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, the 150-year anniversary of Colorado being a state, and having events and even for sponsorships out of Cherry Creek.
I know that the governor is very focused on this. We've not really engaged with them yet, but I appreciate you planting that seed with me, because some of those events could and should be in Cherry Creek. And we'd certainly be honored to host them. Fillmore is really our platform that we love to use, and so we've got a place for them. So thank you for that.
Hi, thank you so much for coming.
Of course.
Thank you. You were talking about parking, and I noticed where I live on Josephine Street, for the whole year, we had 8 to 9 trucks every day,
Mhm.
parking along Josephine, taking up all the parking spaces all day long in the 2-hour parking. 311 doesn't work. Is there a way that, everybody that has a construction site has a number to call, where we can call and those cars can park in the real parking spaces, on parking garages?
Thank you for that question. What we're doing, as I mentioned, we're getting in front of these projects, and we are making sure that as many as can possibly park. We want to get them, frankly, some of them are parking at the mall right now, which we love. That's fine. They've got plenty of inventory over there. But we're trying to get them channeled into garages. Many of these contractors work out of their trucks, and that has become a bit of a problem that we've just not been able to wrap our arms around. But we try to get every single project that comes out of the ground has to have a parking plan. Here's the big challenge. Once a building is up and erected, now all of the tenant finish happens, and that's where the problems occur, is when all the stuff inside starts to happen, because there's multiple plumbers, electricians, drywall, I could go on and on. They become the bigger problem, and we have much less control over them than we do the general contractor. But I appreciate the question, and again, what we're trying to do is manage this to the best of our ability, and this is something we're working with Walker Parking on, is how do we, that's a piece of this we got to get our arms around. Let's go over this side. We'll go. Yes, sir. Terry, go ahead.
I have
here we
a comment more than a question. Myself, and also speaking to many neighbors, disagree with you and do not believe that all this development is, quote, wonderful, exciting, and great. And I would like to see Cherry Creek North Neighborhood Association take a more critical analysis and approach to what is going on, rather than having speakers come here and just give us the rah-rah about how wonderful, great, and awesome everything is. Thank you.
You know, it's a fair comment. It's one that this is not the first time I've heard it. I certainly appreciate it. You know, this is something that the city and county of Denver asked for. The city and county of Denver wanted greater density. It's why they approved the zoning the way they did. This didn't happen by accident. It's why you see it here. It's why you see it in Rhino and other areas around Denver. Density is where is really what the city wanted to have happen. Yeah, we recognize there's certainly folks who have a different opinion of what development does to a community, but it does speak to prosperity. There's no question about that. Does it create attendant problems? No question about that either. Thank you for the comment, though. Gary?
First of all, thank you for coming,
You
and
bet.
I really appreciate all that you do. I'm wondering about the new stores. We're all aware of the musical chairs that's taking place in Cherry Creek North right now. I know our house moved into the mall, and now they're moving back when I think the building on Milwaukee is done. Can you give us the names of any other retailers that might be coming into Cherry Creek?
Well, I think you may know about Mendocino, which is going in on 3rd, right next to Garbarini, which we're super excited about. There has not been a whole lot of announcements. I know that BMC has been keeping their stuff close to the vest with what they're doing on Cherry Lane and that development. We have not yet heard anything about what Waldorf Astoria is doing. What we know is that Waldorf Astoria will demand a high-end restaurant in that space on the ground floor. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But the development community are being very coy about what's happening. The one I can say is in the building at 2nd and Fillmore, the Antero headquarters, the Henry, which is a Sam Fox restaurant concept, is going into that space. And I've heard nothing but great things about it. You know, Sam Fox has North, he has True Food Kitchen, he has Flower Child, which is over at the shopping center. He knows what he's doing. So, and I've heard nothing but good things about the Henry. Who was that? Oh, Little Man Ice Cream going into the former Crepes and Crepes location. Yeah, there's been a lot of work on that space as well. Yeah. So.
You talked about the security program in the BID, and a lot of us who live in the residential area walk to dinner and then come back home, and it's super dark in the residential area. Will any of the security trickle over to those parts?
We are required by our statute, the statute that empowers bids, to keep our money and our efforts within the bid. We'd love to keep our lights up all year, which would be helpful in the district, but we can't do that because it affects the health of the trees. This much I can tell you, and you're going to hear a lot more about this. Our council member, Amanda Sawyer, is exploring the possibility, hope I'm not letting the cat out of the bag here, but she's exploring the possibility of the creation of a general improvement district, an overlay district that would help to fund some of these kind of additional lighting, for example. One thing I've come to realize is this: if we're going to get anything done in Cherry Creek, we're going to have to do it ourselves. The city's not coming to the rescue. They're not going to spend money in Cherry Creek. And I need to acknowledge there are neighborhoods that need investment far greater than Cherry Creek does. And so we need to acknowledge that. So if we're going to get something done, it's going to be because we've said it's important to us and we're going to pay for it. So there'll be a lot more to happen, or you'll hear a lot more of information about the General Improvement District down the road. We're at the very front end of those conversations, and Lou and I both sit on that steering committee. We're helping Council Member Sawyer with the decision-making process.
Hi, Nick. My name is Samantha. I'm relatively new to town and from New York, so I am all about the growth. But I will say, I think, to add on to some of the questions about the concern, looking at in where the St. Paul apartments are. Most of the retailers there are New York or LA based. The Now, Sweet Green, even Mendocino Farms is a California company. Right. Are there any initiatives, or is there any way to have the community come together and come up with an initiative to focus on small businesses that will be able to afford rent other than just big, large change? Because as the rents get more expensive, those small businesses are going to be pushed out. But that's also, I think, a lot of what everyone's talking about, like the neighborhood and the livelihood, and focus on small business owners.
It's a great question. A couple of things I'd point out. This is still, Cherry Creek North is still the largest concentration of small business owners anywhere in the state of Colorado. We acknowledge that some have left, but this is still the greatest concentration. This much I can tell you. Matt Joblin and his project at Cherry Lane have made a commitment to keeping rents in some of his spaces below market such that he can get some local, interesting retail in there. That's not going to happen everywhere. And at the end of the day, you know, a national retailer or a national restaurant is going to have far more resources to get that restaurant or that store open than the local person. But a credit to Matt and the folks at BMC who said, look, we want to be unique. So literally right across the street from the Clio Hotel is going to be, you know, more boutique shopping, more boutique restaurants. And he's committed to keeping the rents such that he can afford to have them there and they can afford to be there. So you're going to see more of that. Other questions?
Do you have any idea if Crate and Barrel will be back?
I don't.
We have
Although-
one from the chat, which is, do you have any update on the Ginny Williams building? It looks
I
like
do.
they took the back of it.
The Ginny Williams building is under construction.
Yeah.
Delighted that that building stayed there. It almost has sort of a historic feel to it. And that is going to be Uchi, am I saying that right? Sushi restaurant? Uchiko, thank you. And so we're delighted. I don't know what the timeline is on that, but we're certainly delighted to see that building stay. You know, it's one of those buildings that just adds to the charm of Cherry Creek North. So, any final questions? I want to take, if I may, one last thing. Because I'm going to put this person on the spot and he has no idea I'm doing this. But some of you may not have met Kyle Chisholm. Kyle Chisholm is the new executive director of the Cherry Creek Chamber of Commerce. Many of you remember Christine, who was here for many, many years and kept that chamber chugging along. Kyle's the new sheriff in town at the chamber. So just want to make sure you knew who Kyle was. So, sorry to put you on the spot there, bud. And in case you didn't know, Kyle offices with us at the BID.
Okay, Kyle,
All
it's your turn to get him next time.
Thank you, everyone.
One more time and thank you. Mr. Safety, you are up.
Oh. It's gonna get clipped, Kevin.
Okay, well, we were going to have Commander Bill here, and he's up in Winter Park and got stuck in the snow, and so he couldn't make it. But we've got Lieutenant Timmerman and Lieutenant Sandoval and Detective Michael Cordova. He's the guy that worked on the watch robberies, and our CRO, John Silva, and Officer Aaron Escalante here. So, and thank you guys for coming out. We really appreciate it. Okay.
You mind, if you don't mind? As long as
Go
I'm not
for
gonna,
it.
as long as I'm
Whatever
not
you'd
gonna-
like.
There we go. Is that okay?
Yep, we'll have Kevin take care of you.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks everyone for having us out here. As Kevin stated, the commander got stuck up in the mountains, so he described it as an epic snowstorm, so I'm sure he's very upset that he had to spend a whole nother day skiing, which, but he wanted to be out here with us. So instead, you have me and some of my colleagues over here. So I'm just going to stay over here because I do usually try not to speak with papers, but I have a lot of numbers to talk about. If I would have realized we had the projector, it would have been a lot easier to just throw them up there, but we'll get through it. So I know when the commander's here, he likes to talk kind of about the district as a whole and then kind of drill down a little bit until we get to your neighborhood. So I'll do that a little bit like he normally would. So District 3, for those of you who don't know, is very large. It's pretty much a third of the city, landmass-wise. And Christy, who's here, who works with us as well, she can correct me with the numbers, but just for an example, the city as a whole has, I believe it's 78 statistical neighborhoods. So since we have 6 districts, you would think 13 per district, but District 3 actually has 26 of those neighborhoods. So we're actually a very large, busy area. Call for service-wise, just this year to date, we're already in, I believe it's 49, 50 days, somewhere around there. We're already around 8,000 calls for service just in our district. And that doesn't even include the 4,500 self-initiated actions that the officers do on their own, whether it's a traffic stop, stopping an individual on the bike path, checking on businesses, neighborhoods, things like that. So if you want a bigger sample size for 2024, we just calls for service is just short of 71,000 calls just in our district. And compared, the next busiest district had only 54, and the slowest had 36,000. So we're almost twice as busy as some of the other districts. Coming down just more into your neighborhoods, looking at the crime. Year to date so far this year, it's a smaller sample size, so I'll talk about the full years as well. But just for the first month and a half of the year this year compared to last year, we're actually down 35% for crime, which is great. I told Kevin it's hard coming out and talking about some neighborhoods like yours because I have to try and pull numbers and different things because I have to figure out something to talk about because you actually have a very safe, awesome neighborhood to live in. The only stat that went up year to date so far, which I know it sounds bad, but I'll explain it, is sexual assault. But it went from 0 to 1, which is still good. And that incident was something that actually originated downtown, and they may or may not have ended up at a hotel in the area. They're not even sure, so I think we're doing pretty good crime-wise there. Can't really go into details. We try not to go into details with those kind of crimes because just the nature of what it is, but just so you're aware. So 2024 compared to 2023, if you look at the stats, because I know a lot of the stats are available online, and I know a lot of people are very engaged and look at those things. If you look at it, it does show that crime went up in the area, and includes the neighborhood, plus it includes the BID and the mall. It went up by 10%, but if you really look at it, it doesn't really worry me because I know a little bit more about what those numbers are representing. Now, we did have a 52% increase in shoplifting just at the mall, which is huge. But in talking with the mall, we really don't think it was much of an increase. It was more just more accurate reporting. I still don't think it's fully accurate, but we did a big push with the mall trying to get them to report more of their incidents that are occurring, because if we don't know about it, we can't do anything about it. We can't direct our resources where they need to be. So we're trying to push and make sure that they're reporting more of what's occurring at the mall, so that way we could just go out and do something with it. So if you pull out those shopliftings that like I said, I really don't think it's an increase. Crime was actually down 25%, and it's really looking great. We did have a few incidents that bumped up some of the assault numbers, and those aren't, if you look at them online, they're not numbers of incidents. They really have to do with numbers of victims. So for example, and I'll talk about a flock incident, like Nick brought up. We had a road rage incident on a University, and a lot of the incidents that affect the numbers in your guys' neighborhoods, it's not really interior to the neighborhood. A lot of it is passing through. A lot of it is those major roads like University, Colorado, things like that, that kind of get brought into your neighborhoods because of where it happened. We had an Uber driver that was driving, I believe, 6 people in their car. So because they were involved in a road rage incident, that counts as a 7 against the crime statistics in the district. And that almost was the complete number for 2023, because there were only 11 total in 23. So using the flock system, they were actually able to identify that car. Detectives were able to identify that car. It was actually an out-of-state person, just in state, in a rental car. And we actually did arrest that individual just because of flock and no other reason. Looking through the rest of the stuff, the only things in the neighborhood that really stood out to me are things that are more random acts of violence, because that's really what you want to key in on, right? It's not so much, certain things that happen things that happen amongst families and such. There's not a lot you could do, and that's a lot of what we deal with down here in District 3. But the 2 incidents that, like I said, the 2 things that pointed out, one was the watch robberies. I know everybody wants to hear about that. Nick mentioned that briefly, and we actually have the detective that investigated it with us today, and he'll come up and talk about it in a minute, so I won't go into it. What I will say, though, is looking at the initial information we had, I never in a million years thought that was going to be a solved case. I thought that was something that was unfortunately just going to, like I said, never be solved. Detective Cordova did an amazing job with, again, the flock system, and this time with the flock system that the BID actually installed. Led to a lot of what he did. But again, I'll let him talk about that. The other incidents, again, like I said, the random acts, was an incident on the bike path where we had an unhoused individual that was assaulting females on the bike path. We only actually had one reported incident, but I believe more did occur, where he just randomly stepped in front of a woman. She stopped her bike. He ended up choking her. Officers arrived pretty quick, but unfortunately he was gone. As a bystander yelled at him, and he stopped and took off. Then we had the BID stepped up their patrols in the area, and we actually had, well, let me rewind slightly. Some of the officers that did respond talked to a bunch of different witnesses. They were able to find an incident that he was occurred elsewhere that they were able to link. It was probably the same suspect, got a picture of that individual, and then the detective put it out to everyone working the area. One of the people working the area was someone working off duty for the BID, and he was able to look at it, recognize the individual, locate him, arrest him on warrants, and then they were able to, working with the victim, identify that it was the same individual and add charges to him as well. And it just so happens, when I was reading through everything, trying to refresh my memory for today, that was the same officer, Detective Cordova, did that as well. So he's kind of a star right now for the neighborhood. So Mike, if you don't mind coming up and just talking a little bit about the watch robberies, and then we'll answer. You want me to get one? All right. Perfect. Thank you. So, and I guess I could explain a little bit more about the flock. So last year, the city invested in it. It actually started with Councilwoman Sawyer and Cashman. They were pushing for it. The city looked into it and they decided to invest it. And there were about 100 throughout the city. And then the BID, in talking with them, they were interested in the technology, and they have about a dozen just in the BID area. And they're kind of just strategically placed on different corners generally. A lot of people have concerns about them because they worry about privacy. The information is only recorded for 30 days and then it purges. Legally, we're allowed to hold it for much longer than that, but that was just what we decided on because we didn't want that privacy issue. It doesn't record faces. What it does is it takes pictures of license plates and vehicles. Now, as we all know, I'm sure all these vehicles that are committing crimes don't necessarily have license plates on them at all times, but there's also search features that it'll identify certain characteristics of vehicles. If they have a bike rack on them, if they have certain kinds of rims on their vehicle, or just different things that you can identify vehicles. And then we could use them to almost track throughout the city where they're going, because people are creatures of habit, right? So they tend to always end up in the same areas. It kind of helps our investigation. I know Nick mentioned that if a car gets red, if it's a stolen plate, a vehicle that was involved in some kind of crime, it will alert the officers in the area, and if they're available, they can respond to it. But a big portion of it, as you'll see in a moment, is the investigation that comes later, where we can track these individuals a little bit. Again, we don't want to keep it too long, but we do keep it long enough where if a crime does occur, we can backtrack a little bit and use it to help us investigate. Now, this isn't only something that's in Denver. A lot of different agencies in the metro area and private entities also have these cameras, and they're all networked together. So when we're searching for a vehicle, and again, you'll see when detective speaks, that we'll even track them outside the metro area to be able to locate them. So in short, I guess that was a long way of saying there are actually quite a few in this area because the BID invested in them.
Yeah, thank you, Lieutenant. Hey, thanks for having me out here. It was a lot of fun hearing Your Honor talk about that. And I do remember him as I started as a detective in 2011. So it's been a long time, but he was probably one signing on some of my warrants. But I will tell you, though, that I grew up in the west side of Denver. So hearing the east side of Denver history is great because my family was from here. So I was in District 4 for 18 years, and then I came out here in 2018 in District 3. It's been an outstanding place to work. I will tell you that we have the most support in the entire city based off the geographical area that we have, right? So it's a huge area, and we couldn't do it without your guys' support, not just the HOA here, Cherry Creek BID or Cherry Creek North Security, but I will tell you, they've been the outstanding partnership in solving some of these crimes. So I just happened to get lucky and got the case on this, and I also had the opportunity to work with him and his staff off duty. Normally we would have them there on Fridays and on the weekends, but now that they've increased that, I get to meet a lot of the business owners, and then I patrol down here, so I get to meet a lot of people. And so if I met a couple of you, if not, I enjoy to meet most of you guys coming forward. But there's a couple things I want to talk about. Nick and his staff have given us the opportunity to be successful with the new technology that's available to us. So it's old police techniques and detective techniques that we use with the modern technology like license plate readers and halo cameras. So the city did invest on having some halo cameras within the Cherry Creek area, which includes the mall and the bike path, and then along Colorado, and then also along University. So on some of those, we're able to track the license plate reader. And the one that I want to talk about is this robbery that happened. And we do know that these suspects were targeting residents here that were coming from the mall for dinner and then traveling back home. And they were specifically targeting them for Rolex watches. So we saw the pattern. This was back in September of last year, I'm sorry. And then November is when they started to uprise on some of them. So we had the first robbery on November 1st. It was an attempted robbery, so they weren't successful, but they did try to rob him at gunpoint. So I immediately got a lot of support from my command staff. They gave me not only the resources of our anti-crime team, but we also worked with Christine and the rest of the crew at the CROs, and then also with the BID, and we got their staff and everybody. As soon as we got the video and the pictures of the suspect, we sent it out to Crime Stoppers. And I think the only news media that gave it out was Telemundo, and I think it was because of all the stuff that was coming up. But I will tell you how that plays an important part in this investigation. But they were the only media outlet that took out the Crime Stoppers. Unfortunately, 10 days later, we had another robbery that was over closer to, I think it was 2nd and Cook, and they also tried to rob him for his Rolex watch, and that was at gunpoint. And immediately, Cherry Creek North Security was able to give me the video, and we were able to send that information out immediately. So by that weekend, we had the suspect vehicle car identified based off of the flock, and it was based off the stickers that were in the rear view window and the temporary license plate. So we were able to get that out there in the anti-crime team, and we had a bunch of undercover detectives out here. So we had a lot of stuff working that entire time. And I will tell you, with that information, we were able to find and track the car within 6 days. So we had the car in custody in Greeley. We did know that the car was coming down here, and it was seen on both the 1st and the 10th. And it was involved in both robberies, and then that person would drive from here and go out to Greeley. So we were able to track him out to there, got the car recovered, processed the car, which led us to the identifying the getaway driver, who ultimately identified the person that was involved in the robberies. So these were both individuals that were immigrants here, and we were able to get warrants for them successfully. And it was based off of the license plate reader and the video surveillance and some of the video that we received that captured some of these things. So I will tell you, it's not just all me that did it. It was a lot of work with everybody involved. And I will tell you, having that support is what's made us successful. And the other one that he's talking about the woman that was injured on the bike path, that was another thing that came out of Cherry Creek North Security. They were able to get that information out and the photo, and then I just happened to get lucky and drive around the corner, and there he was. So with that information, it was just dumb luck. But we were able to get that and get him off the street because he was targeting women and on the bike path, and then just randomly attacking people. And then come to interview him, and we found out that he just had an issue with women in general, and that's who he targeted. He didn't target the men that were walking by him. He was specifically targeting them, women in there. So it was good to get him right away, but it was with the help with the security team out here and the support. I think the only other question that I had talked about our analyst was Cherry Creek is a busy place. It's new developments and everything, and we're doing the best that we can with our cameras. But I will tell you that some of these businesses, we got to make sure we can get some more cameras down here. You look at some of these other jurisdictions like the Meadows, Park Meadows Mall, there's cameras all over that place. So you get license plates. I could tell you with having the license plate reader, I know it's been a struggle with trying to get those because of safety reasons. But we got facial recognition capabilities. There's a lot of modern technologies that we could use to solve some of these crimes. But I think the most important thing is we got to make sure that we have enough cameras. That would be my only push, is to be able to use the technology we have, get some of these businesses that will have exterior cameras that will be successful. And we all go to Starbucks, and I will tell you, they have video that's pretty good inside, so if you're fine, but the outside cameras, we need to work on some of those. And I'm working with them personally to try to get them to upgrade their system. The Fillmore building, they have wonderful cameras that have been able to help us with that, so they've been pretty successful. But I'd like to see more cameras that are available. I'll have the lieutenant talk about a new system that we have. It's called Fusus, and it's supposed to be able to integrate our city-owned cameras with private cameras. And I think that's something that Richard Barrett is working with us about, trying to get that information into this system so that I can be able to track and see, so we can get real-time data and real video of these crimes. We've seen how successful they are, and we want to continue it. But I will tell you, the increase of patrol, if you see us driving around, we try to hit some of the areas. You do have full-time off-duty officers that are out here, and we see or hear something off of 4th and Detroit, we'll handle those calls. But our priority is also the business district down here. So that's our main focus. But as you all are aware, there's 750,000 residents here in Denver. But I can tell you at any given time, there's 2 million people that come in, shop, entertainment, all that stuff. And in Cherry Creek, you walk all the time and you'll see all that. So it's a great place to work. I appreciate you giving me the time to talk. But if you have any questions, we're open. You have 16 detectives that work in my unit. And like he said, we handle about 14,000 cases a year, which we all can't manage. So we cut them down to about 7,000 or 8,000 is what we can actually handle. And we handle property crimes all the way to violent crimes. So anywhere in between there. But there's 60 people on my team, including 2 sergeants and our lieutenant that manages our unit. So we couldn't be successful without you. So I will tell you that growing up as a young kid, seeing how important it is, people getting involved and helping me with that information has been outstanding. Is there any questions? Sure. Go ahead.
Well, before you ask any kind of questions, let me just say that Detective Cordova is very humble. He didn't accidentally get picked for that case. He was picked on purpose for a reason, and he never just accidentally turns the corner and finds the bad guy. He's very good at doing those things, I promise you.
Well, I appreciate that.
And before we take any kind of questions, Christy or John, do you guys have anything else you want to add before we hit the questions? And you don't have to, but just if you have anything you wanted to add.
We'll just have some flyers for reminders of the CAB meeting. Excuse me, as well as Coffee with the Cop has changed to the 3rd Wednesday of the month for Red Nixon's. And you can need the pamphlets up here, as well as the some Denver track pamphlets and some 529 garage to register your bikes.
You used to have Coffee with the Cops in Cherry Creek North. Do you not do that anymore?
So we have the one at Nixon's that's monthly, and then we try to spread the other ones around a little bit.
I know, so it did sound like 60. It's actually 16. But yeah. Okay.
We have 2 events we're hoping to share with the Cherry Creek community. We'll have a coffee with the cop, probably at Starbucks. They have asked us. And then we're looking to do an active shooter training, which would be for the businesses, but as well for all of you. It's what to do if you're ever caught in a store, building, restaurant, and there's an active shooter. Again, it's not the most fun to talk about, but it is great to be prepared. So we'll have those 2 coming up. And I know that Kevin does an amazing job, and Kate, are you here?
Kate is not.
Okay, sorry, of sharing out the emails. But if anybody would like to reach out to myself or John, we can also add you to our Neighborhood Watch email list. And we also have a Neighborhood Watch training tomorrow night at the district station on University and I-25. If anybody wants to come, we'll just go through the very basics of who to call, when to call, how to report, and there's implicit bias in there too as well.
All right, I do know we will go to questions in 1 second, but we did have one online one I'll just address real quick. Someone asked how many of the 60 detectives are, work with Cherry Creek in particular. It was just a mishearing. There are actually 16, not 60. And now, citywide, we have a lot of detectives. But as far as the 16, those are the ones that are assigned to these general crimes within District 3. At any given time, any of them could be involved with Cherry Creek North. Mike tends to get involved a little bit more than some others simply because he works up here so much, so that he knows a lot of the business owners, he knows a lot of the people with the bid, he knows a lot of the neighbors. So that's why he ends up getting pulled a little bit more probably than some of the others. But all of them are familiar with the area. All of them get cases from the area. If there's anything pattern related or something that we think would relate to other stuff, we will try and keep the same detective involved in those same incidents because they're very familiar with it and they can do a great job of, linking everything together. But it's really a team effort for that. And now we'll go to questions for anybody.
Yes, when you drive down First Avenue and you're going to by University, where all the traffic meets all the different people, quite often there are people that are tumblers or entertainers or whatever you want to call them, very distracting in the street constantly during the day. And I think there's so much traffic and you have so much to watch with the cars that I don't know why they're allowed to be in the street doing all of that.
So for certain things, that's a very difficult problem to deal with. It shouldn't be from the sounds of it. But as far as the entertainer types, I know there are permits for certain people to do certain things. I will be fully honest with you, I'm not familiar with those permitting, but a lot of those are permitted to do so. As far as as far as the people who are doing other things like asking for money and trying to wash windows, which I know it has hit the area a little bit, but not nearly as much as some of the other areas. Those are things we're working on. They are not allowed to be in the street. They are allowed to be on the sidewalks, but not in the street in particular. But we've been working with the city's attorney's office. They're very low level crimes or incidents, I'll say. So it makes it very difficult to effectively change those problems. But and not to mention also, I talked about some of the stats and how busy we are. So because of prioritizing incidents, it ends up being a lower priority just due to everything else we're dealing with. So just know it is something we're working on, and it has been a problem at First University. I am well aware. It has been a much bigger problem elsewhere. So of course it ends up falling into where we have to address first, second, third kind of thing. But we are aware and we are trying to do something with it.
Thank you.
Yes,
hi, thank you. As we all know, Cherry Creek is a beautiful area to live in, to walk in, to take our dogs on a walk, to be out with kids and everything. With the increase of development and the traffic and the cars here, can you talk a little bit about the pedestrian safety that we may need a better handle on, a better light on? Because many times I walk my dog like others in the neighborhood walk their dogs and their children. And there are many times where people are, driving through those stop signs. They do not stop. They don't stop in the winter when it's bad. They really don't stop in the summer. So I'm hoping that maybe you can address that concern.
So I will say that is definitely something that is always a concern that we bring up. A lot of development happens throughout the cities, and a lot of times the thought isn't given to the safety aspect of it. Can we get more officers or just different things to look into? As far as our district goes, the mayor has tried to hire more officers as fast as we can. Unfortunately, we have a lot of people retiring, so that ends up being a big issue because there's only so much extra time to do some of these extra things. And our traffic unit is something that's definitely suffered from our staffing issues throughout the last few years. Luckily, I will say that the BID has kind of stepped up. I know I'm not trying to, say they're the saviors of everything, but they are great partners for us. And when they, we were working, I believe Friday, Saturday, and Sundays is when they had off-duty officers at the busiest times of day. And once there is more development, there's more people, and they saw that some of those robberies began to occur, they stepped up immediately and made it a 7-day-a-week off-duty job. And even though those robberies were solved, they committed to continuing that, at least as far as the budget will allow. They've committed to continuing to do that. So we do have officers that are dedicated to the area 7 days a week. Now, they're not assigned to the neighborhood itself. They're assigned to the business district. But like Detective Cordova said, a lot of that bleeds over into the neighborhood. If there's something that occurs right around the bid, they're not just going to ignore it if something happens. They're going to go respond. So during those busiest hours when people are in the area, they are very responsive in the area. And I will say that I do encourage officers to hang around certain areas that are getting more developed, are getting more businesses, things like Broadway, locations like Broadway, Cherry Creek North, some areas on Colorado Boulevard. We definitely encourage our officers when they're free and not on calls for service to spend time in those areas.
Yeah, and then I work as one of the off-duty officers, so I will tell you that that's one of our responsibilities is traffic. So you'll see us doing a lot more traffic stops and trying to correct some of that behavior. We do also, I get some traffic officers that will come down here inside, do some of the red light and the stop signs. So I do see them from time to time. So I can pull them in as we need them. And then also the Cherry Creek North security team, if they see something, they're contacting us, and then we'll go and address that problem. And you also see an increase of right-of-way, as you guys all see that they'll be down there. So we have access to them, but we are increasing that, and we are aware of those issues. And you'll see a lot more enforcement coming on throughout the rest of the year.
And to add one more thing to that, and then we'll move on. So last year, early in the year, the mayor committed to buying e-bikes for the officers in each of the districts. So now we have 4 in each district. Unfortunately, because of the process, right, we didn't get them until the cold weather hit. So we haven't really used them that much. But as the new year comes in and the weather starts getting a little nicer, we envision that those e-bikes will be used a lot more in areas like Wash Park, Cherry Creek North, Broadway, kind of those areas I was just mentioning. So we're going to try and get officers out there, because sometimes when you're in the car, it's one thing, but it's a lot different when you're up close and personal. You can talk to people a little more. So I'm a big fan of the bikes, and the bikes are a little hard because, officers are trying to ride them around 10 hours, but the e-bikes will help that, I think. And so we're looking forward to getting some officers out there.
One more over here. Go ahead, man.
Hi. Do you think that those cameras that you have for detecting the license plates can also detect racers that happen at night, or the car racing that happens like on 6?
Yeah, no, we don't have that technology to do a radar that tells us those, but we do have that type of enforcement. And I will tell you, Lieutenant Troy has his team out there that are doing that, making that enforcement. So he is aware of the issue that happens down here at night and some of those issues, and we're focusing on those.
And to add to that, like you said, Lieutenant Sandoval is out at night. Those are some of the problems that he focuses on with the team. But we also, for the last couple of years now, we've had a street racing group that will work. It's usually on Sundays, because that's usually when we get the worst of it. But they'll move around and they'll work throughout different days of the week. And their sole focus is we'll pull people from different districts, because we do have those staffing issues where you can only do so much. So we'll team up with the other districts, and we'll just do strictly street racing enforcement. We do a lot of social media stuff with that, because a lot of it is talked about in the social media, and they'll track it and try and prevent it as much as possible. But a lot of that becomes a big issue because we're not allowed to chase people for street racing, right? And we'd probably lose anyway. But so yeah, it's a problem as well that we're working on. Oh.
I have a question and a comment.
Yes.
Comment is question, whatever. We hear what you do. What can we do as personal people that live in the neighborhood to be safe? The other question is, not a question, but it was brought up at a neighborhood meeting years ago by somebody from your district that on a certain day a week of the month, they have a large pickup going through the alleys. And it was mentioned that some of these items put out there are dressers, furniture, and it's a real, in my mind, it's a real attraction, because I heard of a fellow in a restaurant in North Denver saying, "You won't believe this neighborhood, what they put out in their alleys." So just a comment there.
Sure. I just got one quick question. I'll tell you, we work closely with Christy. She does a lot of these engagements to talk about crime strategies. And I will tell you that the majority of it comes from you guys talking about there's a garage door open, ring camera, those type of things. If you see something, say something. So we're not going to be aware of it. If you see a problem, make sure you call it in. If it's dealing with people at First and University, juggling, give us an opportunity to deal with that. There's street racing or some of that stuff that is behind. And we do have that issue of scrappers going through the alley. I will tell you that since the city went away with the dumpsters and got you guys to do those type of things, that we've seen an increase in some of that stuff. But majority of the stuff out here is just the garage. It's a crime of opportunity. So don't leave your garage door open. Don't leave anything in your car that you're not willing to lose, because that's majority of our crime is based off an opportunity. So,
and I will say, I think a big portion of, it seems like a lot of the decreases we've seen with property crime, because we've seen huge decreases in property crime. And I've personally, I read the cases every week on what's going on in the district, and it does seem like usually the garages, people leaving them open are the biggest problem for me. And it seems like there have been less of that, at least this year so far. I know it's only a month and a half into the year, but it does seem like people are doing a little better job about securing the garages, securing their belongings in their vehicles. But as far as what you guys could do is just that, secure your belongings, secure your properties, because crime of opportunity. And then the CROs and Christy, they do neighborhood watch meetings all the time, where that's all they talk about. Is they talk about tips on what you guys could do, lighting, just different things that they would suggest that the neighbors do. And they are far better at it than I am, so I would suggest going to one of those meetings with them.
Last question.
It'd be nice if you had some kind of alert, because I heard in our neighborhood, 2 blocks from where I live, up on Cook Street, they went into the garage to a panel open chain.
And I have that very thing, every once in a while we'll see them doing that. And that is something I've talked to. So every month we do have meetings at our district with the commander and all the lieutenants, and the CROs are there. And we go over crime in the district as a whole. And last year I saw quite a bit of that. It's something that comes and goes every once in a while. And so I did talk about that quite a bit last year, about making sure you're securing your garages. They will cut through and they'll reach through, those emergency latches that you pull down. They'll cut a little hole in your garage and then they'll stick something in there and pull it. So there are ways, there are videos online, pictures online on ways of trying to secure that, whereas you could still use it if you need it in an emergency, but it'll kind of make it a little harder for people to yank on.
Kevin, last question?
Ever since COVID, DMV shut down and everything, and these temporary plates for years. I know a few months ago I saw something 2023 and something 2022. Are they gonna, I think I've heard that there's an outreach thing or something, they're gonna start citing these people.
Yeah. So pretty much, Kevin was asking about, especially since COVID, there's been a lot of registration issues and concerns with individuals driving around. Now we have, our policies have changed up a little bit in that aspect. The chief is not a big fan of the stops for just low-level reasons. So for that reason, we need more to stop than just the registration. But any good cop can always figure out different ways to stop a vehicle if they really need to. But what we have noticed is there are time frames that the chief has allowed us to, for the month of November, we're going to allow, especially with new officers learning how to do things, we're going to allow those lower level stops. And you'll see a lot more enforcement when it comes to those registration violations. And I don't know from numbers personally, but from what I've been told at least, and I can't vouch for it, where I've been told because of those, they'll announce it in the media that, all right, this month we're cracking down on it. Because of that, that has led to a lot more people going and actually registering because of the fear that we're cracking down on it. And we are, when we're doing those things, we are cracking down on it as much as we can. But that's an ongoing issue as well. That became very widespread after COVID did because of all those shutdowns. And once something becomes lax and people become used to routine and doing things or not doing things, it becomes a lot harder to try and get them back into that groove of doing it. But it's definitely something we are trying to address.
Well, tell the commander the team was an incredible sub.
Well, obviously you've never been to a meeting with Commander because his comedy routine is far better than mine.
Yeah.
So.
We appreciate, let's thank him for all of
Thank you.
At the beginning, I talked about our communication team. So here's some reminders. Bab's again working on Spring Fling on June 4th. Mark your calendars. Sip and Savor September 10th. Dick, if you would stand up. Dick's ahead of our lecture series, and he is searching for people that have a passion to identify people that would be like the suggestion tonight, part of a lecture series. So he's looking for people that have a passion around lectures that we can bring to our community. So we already have one for tonight. Nick, I want to thank you again. Kyle, thanks for being here for the chamber and the judge and your support system with you. And thank you for being here. We are 2 minutes early.